So a couple of days ago, I predicted vis-a-vis getting some insider information that there was going to be an election that gets called on Sunday at the very latest. And well, that has been confirmed by CBC, right? They put out this article on March 20th, right? Saying that he's going to dissolve Parliament on Sunday. And then you can see there's my video from a couple of days ago, leaked Canadian election to be called on Sunday. And here we are dealing with preparation for an election, which is why my last video was my full endorsement to Pierre Poilievre. I just want to make that abundantly clear, to quote a liberal. Now we're taking a look at why did Mark Carney call an election? What's going on? Is he using this honeymoon phase to try and capitalize on this momentum to potentially secure a minority government? What does all of this look like? Well, we're going to break it down and take a look at that in this video. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage you all to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It does really help grow the channel. And before we do get into it, I do want to encourage you guys to click the link down below in the description or the pinned comment below to find yourselves getting some of these stickers here. Look at that. Trudeau 2.0, Pierre Poilievre, I'll fix that. Oil and gas for sale. Canada is not for sale. Sir Mark Carney, not my PM. Canada strong. Canada first, right above my head. That's probably my absolute favorite. If you use code SAVECANADA, all in caps, you'll get yourself 20% off. Again, the link is down below in the description or the pinned comment below. But without further ado, let's get right into this video, shall we? Let's take a look.
In a way, Mark Carney had no choice.
Prime Minister Mark Carney will ask the Governor General to dissolve Parliament and will call a snap federal election this Sunday.
He's on the clock. Parliament has been on pause for more than 2 months now, but set to resume on Monday, March 24th. And on that day, his government would have to face down every other party leader who has sworn one simple thing.
New Democrats will be voting against this government for an election
to choose a new parliament composition.
Non-confidence motion at the earliest possible opportunity.
But even that, of course, may not be the real thrust of what might become the biggest political gamble of Mark Carney's career.
I think if Mark Carney could actually have the vote today, he'd probably do it because he has got momentum on his side.
He does unfortunately have momentum, but I don't think it's as real as what people have been even saying or as what I've even been saying. I have been saying on X things like, I think Mark Carney has enough momentum to possibly secure this, but after further review, I just don't see how that is possible at all, right? We know that social media and the media can manipulate our thoughts to be perceived a certain way, to either encourage us or in this case deter us from going to the polls. And so nobody knows Mark Carney. People are saying they're going to blindly vote for him. Now he's copying everything from Pierre Poilievre. Like, he just cut the GST on the purchase of new homes or first-time home buyers for houses under $1 million. That's like what Pierre Poilievre has literally been proposing. He's said it so many times. So this freakazoid can try to copy Pierre all he wants. He is not Pierre. He doesn't have the same morals and ethic compass as Pierre.
If Mark Carney does call an election as expected, and he has any hint of a hopeful smile while doing it, this is why. What you're looking at here is an average of every publicly available major poll in Canada. Polling numbers that for nearly the last 2 years have predicted a crushing Liberal defeat, but that have since sharply turned around over just the last 2 months. The Liberals would have to go back years to find a time when they were polling ahead of the Conservatives, but they are now. In a CBC poll tracker simulation of 5,000 possible election results, taking each party's range of projected outcomes into account, the Liberals have a staggering 77% chance of winning. And check those odds on winning a majority. If an election were held today, based on current polling, the projection is for the Liberals to win 176 seats. That's a very slim majority, but what would have been unthinkably strong results just a few months ago.
I remember looking at the numbers just as Chrystia Freeland was resigning as finance minister. The Liberals were projected to win fewer seats than the Bloc Québécois, not in Quebec, from coast to coast.
It's the shift in the poll is wild. Everybody was writing the Liberals' obituary, frankly. And once Trudeau said he was going to step aside, immediately there seemed to be a shift.
I do agree that there was a bounce up, but I feel like it's a dead cat bounce. All right. It bounced up a little bit, but it's not a total reverse in the polls. And I'm guilty of saying that it is. Okay. I understand my faults and I can admit when I'm wrong. And so I'm admitting that I've been wrong about the popularity of the Liberals. It's just not true. People are fed up with the Liberals under Justin Trudeau, and they're certainly fed up with the Liberals under Prime Minister Carney.
In the mood, a shift in the polls. Then Donald Trump comes in and he ramps up his talk of tariffs. So I think those factors contributed to a real reversal in what we were seeing in terms of popular support.
Now, let me be clear. Polls and projections are not outcomes. They can also be wrong, but they're helpful to identify changes over time, shifts in momentum. And what is undeniably true is that Canadians have had to deal with a major change over the last 2 months.
I'd like to see Canada become our 51st state.
We have a tremendous deficit with Canada.
We don't need them to make our cars. We don't need them to give us lumber.
We subsidize Canada by the tune of about $200 billion a year. And for what?
This has played to the advantage of the Liberals for two big reasons. One, they're the party in power. They've had first crack at making a stand against Donald Trump's second term in the White House.
There's no question that it has been to the benefit of the Liberals, Mark Carney in particular. But you saw the public's view of Trudeau improve in those last few weeks as he was the primary voice standing up to Donald Trump saying, never a 51st state, when he was the one on the line having those conversations.
But the other reason Trump has been a gift to the political fortunes of the Liberal Party is that he has pulled the conversation away from what was the Conservatives' strongest set of arguments.
We need to trigger an axe the tax election as soon as possible.
The problem with spending more money as a solution to inflation is that it simply pours more gasoline on the inflationary fire. Radical, uncontrolled immigration.
We don't need more bureaucracy, we need more homes.
I should say, these continue to be major issues in this country, and in many cases, the number one issue for many Canadians. In Western Canada, the Conservatives maintain strong polling leads. Again, when we look at the average of all major polls. But for many other Canadians, all of a sudden, there's a new pressing issue here.
Canada's a very bad abuser.
Think of how beautiful that country would be without that artificial line running right through it. Somebody drew it many years ago with a ruler, just a line.
Before Trump, it was affordability, really a big front and center issue. But if you look at the public opinion polling, the thing right underneath it is Donald Trump. And it's hard to disentangle those two things.
For any Canadians who now feel Donald Trump is what looms largest, the most imminent threat is tariffs.
The threat.
I don't think that Donald Trump is as big of a threat to Canada as a Liberal government. I don't see it that way. Look, he certainly has a bone to pick with the Canadian government, not the people, but the Canadian government, because he feels like we're subsidizing them, or we're being subsidized by the tune of $200 to $250 billion. I get that. Would it be any different under Pierre Poilievre? We don't know, right? There's the whole 5D chess component that some people think that Donald Trump is doing in reverse psychology, and make with that, form your own opinion, whatever it is you want to do, make with that what you will. I do think that if you just block out the noise from what Trump is doing right now, for our country's sake, economic, social, fiscally responsible, all of those things are going to be so much better under a conservative government. I mean, just look at how they talk. Pierre is a genuine person, whereas Mark Carney is a slimy banker who's high up in the World Economic Forum. I mean, we thought Trudeau was bad. Mark Carney's going to be way worse, literally way worse. It's horrible. He's going to sneak things in probably better than what Trudeau ever was able to do. So it's all or nothing right now, folks. Canada is on its final straw. That's what it feels like.
Of tariffs themselves has hurt our economy, right? Businesses are holding off on investment. They're choosing to invest in the United States.
When people are worried about the effect on tariffs, they're worried about the effect on the economy. They're worried about jobs. They're worried about the cost of things, whether they're going to be able to make their rent and their mortgage.
Because, have you been keeping track of them all? There are potentially general tariffs on everything.
Tomorrow tariffs, 25% on Canada.
There are reciprocal tariffs coming in April.
Whatever they tariff us, other countries, we will tariff them. That's reciprocal, back and forth.
There are tariffs on steel and aluminum.
We're doing a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum.
Also threats on Canadian lumber.
We don't need trees from Canada, and we have lumber. We have the best lumber.
The auto manufacturing sector.
We certainly don't want their automobiles. I'd rather have them made in Michigan.
And Canadian dairy under siege too.
Nobody ever talks about that. 250% tariff, which is taking advantage of our farmers.
All of these things threaten to make buying things and earning a living in Canada much more difficult. Tariffs just weren't part of the equation before Trump took office, and they go a long way in predicting how the next Canadian election will play out. But there's also the more existential threat that not all Canadians take seriously, but some do.
If they became our 51st state, it'd be the greatest thing they could ever do.
We're never going to be the 51st state, but it causes us to be on edge all the time and wonder what the heck this guy is up to.
Canadians are really proud of this country. There are certainly many things to criticize in our past. There are things to criticize in our present in terms of how the country is run. But fundamentally, people feel very strongly about living here.
And consider for a moment how difficult it might be to make the election about looking inward, about purely domestic when Trump himself.
Now, did he say looking inward because what happened with Rosemary the other day where Carney said, Rosemary, you have to look inward about that question? Like, that's, if he did, that's pretty funny. If not, that's a pretty funny coincidence either way.
Seems perfectly willing to inject himself into Canadian politics directly.
The conservative that's running is stupidly no friend of mine. I don't know him, but he said negative things. So when he says negative things, I couldn't care less. I think it's easier to deal, actually, with a liberal.
It's clear that President Trump wants the Liberals in power because they will keep this country weak. That's exactly the kind of weak, compromised, conflicted leadership that Donald Trump wants, and it's why he endorsed Mark Carney yesterday.
Pierre Poilievre was very keen to talk about those remarks, and that's because they are politically beneficial to him. He knows that one of the attacks from the Liberals is going to be that Pierre Poilievre is the Canadian version of Donald Trump. Chrystia Freeland liked to say maple syrup MAGA. And so when Pierre Poilievre can point to comments like that, where Donald Trump does not seem to particularly like him, he's saying to Canadians, listen, I am not simpatico with this guy that you are feeling so angry at, so betrayed by.
So look, the election is now almost certainly just around the corner. The Conservatives have a clear game plan. Undermine Mark Carney.
He has conflicts of interest that he will have to manage, but he won't tell us what those conflicts are.
And Poilievre must try to convince Canadians of what he says they've lost under successive Liberal governments.
That is the lost Liberal decade, a decade during which the Liberals were in power and Mark Carney was, for half of that time, the economic advisor to Justin Trudeau.
He is trying to demonstrate that he's much more serious about the cost of living issue. In good economic times, we're all for the environment. When we have economic instability, when people are concerned about just putting food on the table, concern for environment just plummets. In that context, they obviously think they have a winning combination.
But the Liberals, their challenge is to keep whatever momentum they have going.
We can stand up for ourselves. We've called out those comments. They're disrespectful, they're not helpful, and they need to stop.
Translation, they will want to play their trump card as hard and often and for as long as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the longer we wait, the more negotiations, the more trade war rhetoric continues. It might actually turn out to be a little bit better for the Liberals because they're the only party that has any say or any negotiation power. And this muzzle that's been put on Parliament, on our politicians, on the Conservatives, frankly, has been extremely annoying and borderline kind of illegal. I understand the prorogation, that this is how it's used. It's greasy. Just because it's legal doesn't mean it's okay, right? And so every single party was pretty much ready for a vote of non-confidence, and then this happened, right? And so this is what the Liberals do. They're sneaky, cheeky little snakes, and we have to make sure that this election is too big to rig. I don't necessarily trust part of this process. I think that there's going to be some sketchy stuff that happens behind the scenes. We know, we've paid attention to protests that take place in person, to social media rhetoric, to people in person. Nobody's running around wearing Mark Carney t-shirts going, "I love liberals." Nobody's doing that. People in the hundreds of thousands, probably millions, are doing that for the Conservatives, okay? We know that Pierre it's aligned for him to win, yet there's all these kind of propaganda campaigns that have been pushed out recently, and it's trying to demoralize people from going out and voting. And that's why we have to make sure that we stay fired up and ready to vote for Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives. That is the end of the video, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in another video. Bye for now.